maybe Ash just you give like a little like who you are, what you
Yeah.
do kind of thing, and then
Yeah.
we'll have a chat. Mm.
I love that Lacey does the giveaway. Like that is so cool of you. Such a good idea. Um, I'm so pumped to be here. My name is Ashley. I am the founder of an internationally accredited coach certification program, Quantum Coaching Academy, and we certify the next generation of world-class coaches. We help get you certified in 8 different modalities, really amazing healing modalities. We have Reiki energy, we have quantum life coaching, we have a full-blown NLP certification. We have group, we also facilitate and certify in group coaching. So we have a whole array of things. And my passion is really about helping coaches become amazing at their craft and really know how to facilitate transformation and in an excellent way, which is why Lacey and I are so connected and on the same page because she is just like the embodiment of excellence in her coaching and her business. And that's why her clients are with her for literally years and years and years and years. Like you have clients for a very long time, which I think is speaks volumes to who you are and what you do.
It's so interesting because I feel like that's actually like a really good lead in to what we were going to talk about. Because I think when you have clients for so long, a lot of people think the reason you have clients for so long is because they're like dependent on you or they need you or they um think they need you to tell them how to do it right or whatever. And I feel like that's such a good lead into this conversation
Mm.
because I think it's the opposite of all of that. Like, I think when you have clients for a really long time, it's because they realize they don't need you. It's because they realize they just want that support and they want that reflection, but it's not because they're like, I have to have a coach. If they felt like that, they would just be coach jumping all the time, you know?
It's so true. I feel like it's like a really good, when you're in a really good relationship, you don't need your partner. You want to share that experience with them. And it's
Yeah.
this, like you just said it, they don't need you, they want you. And it's the synergy and alignment that gets created, like you said, as a reflection of, yeah, just knowing you so deeply that they can see things that they can help you identify your blind spots and help you when you're stuck, help you when you move forward, just like any amazing relationship. So it's a great point.
Yes, totally. So the first myth that we wanted to talk about, which is like obviously so related to that, is that like you should always tell your clients what to do. I think that's like what started this whole thing as I was talking about that in stories and Ashley was like, "Let's talk about this," because
Let's go.
I feel like that is what people feel like as a coach is like I am supposed to always have the answers, always be able to tell my clients what to do, and it makes coaching miserable, but
Oh,
it's also like not actually what's good for the client, you know?
it's so true. And I'm so glad that we're starting with this one because a lot of people that are just starting their coaching businesses and they really are in that mindset like I have to have every single life experience possible so that I know what to tell my client when it comes to relationships or I know what to tell them during business like different business situations or even just life coaching in
Yeah.
general. And we really work this out of our students because number one, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's
So
absolutely
exhausting.
exhausting if you are just like telling your clients every single thing that they should do because here's the caveat to this is like 99.9% of the time, okay, maybe not that much, but most of the time people know what to do,
For
but they don't do it.
sure.
They know what to do, but they're not doing it. And so that's where the coaching comes in, right?
Yeah.
We have to know how to, we actually, as coaches, don't have to tell people what to do because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but in your life, like when people give me advice, I'm like, uh huh, yeah, cool, cool. Like, thank you. Thank you for that advice. And
Totally.
I don't always take it because it might not resonate with me.
Yeah.
An example of this, like a mistake that I've made, is I have had business coaching clients in the past that I have given my launch strategies to. Like, hey, this works for me. Try this. I'm telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from that because it didn't work for them. It didn't
Mhm.
feel good to them. It didn't um it didn't align with their energy to do it the way that I did it.
Yeah.
And I want to hear your perspective on this because I know that you probably work with people and their launch strategies all the time. And I learned how to actually coach in business better by making that huge mistake. Does that make
Totally.
sense?
Oh my God, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel similarly. Like I think that we try to sometimes like distill things down into like too much simplicity. Like if I just tell someone what to do, they will do it. I have like learned that in my own life because I used to do that with like food stuff. Like I would be like, if someone
Mm,
would just give me a meal plan, then I'll just follow it and it would be easy. And then
right.
I was like, oh, it's never that simple. Like I would buy like, 20, like whatever they were, $27 meal plans that someone's selling on IG, and I'll be like, oh, this will make it easy, and I'm like, that is never what has like gotten me results, or like it's just never that
Mm,
simple. And so I think that like when we try to distill it down to something so simple of like, I'll just tell them what to do and they'll do it, we're always going to be disappointed, and the client is always going to be disappointed because it's never that easy and it's never that simple. You wouldn't be teaching a coaching certification. How many tools do you teach in
oh
it,
my
right?
God.
Like with like 100
Yeah.
tools if we didn't need 100 tools. Like if it was just as simple as I tell a client what to do and they do it, like everything would be easier,
So true.
right? But
So
it's
true.
just not true.
Todd, you're in the camera. Say hi. Okay, never mind. You're so right. Like, do you see what I'm
He's
doing?
like not trying to do the Instagram husband thing today.
I'm like, I need to be on this angle or my phone could be plugged in at the same time. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. It's so
Which is why
interesting.
you
I'm,
need tools, because you have to have the tools to be like, okay, so if it's not as simple as they'll just always do what I tell them to, or it's that easy, then you need a set of tools to make that easier or better.
yeah.
And I think you also need a set of tools to regulate yourself around that. Like,
Hmm.
one of my clients, I always joke with this about her, but I'll like tell her something I think that's a good idea and she'll fight me on it. And then invariably 3 weeks later, she'll come to a session and be like, do you know what I think is a good idea? And it'll be the thing I told her 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, yeah, totally. And so we need like the tools to like self-regulate too, so that when we're telling someone to do something, they're not doing it. We're not like losing our shit and being like, I'm a bad coach, or like they're a bad
Yes.
client or whatever.
Did you see him just do a duck? I can't.
He's like, I got it this time.
Instagram will not see me naked. Um, so I'm curious for everyone that is tuned in right now, on a scale of 1 to 10 around this first myth around feeling like you have to tell your clients what to do and have all the answers for your clients. On a scale from like 1, I never do that, to like 10, this is like a serious issue, like I want to stop doing it. Where do you fall on that scale? I'm
Yeah,
just curious because it's a self-assessment. I think part of being
totally.
coached from my perspective too is I'm always in self-assessment. Even now I fall into these traps where I was coaching on a group call the other day and I caught myself going into telling someone what to do. And afterwards I got to like talk it out with myself and reassess how I want to show up next time or how I could have implemented that differently. And kind of like what you were
Yeah,
just saying, you gave your client a suggestion. And I know that you wear the consultant hat as well as the coaching hat. So that, and they can live under the same roof,
yeah.
right? They can 100% work so well together. And even when you gave your client an idea and then she fought you on it and then came back weeks later, it really wasn't effective until she came up with it herself, discovered
Totally.
it for herself.
Yes. And it's like that, like we have to see that as a good thing. I think so many coaches see that as a negative thing, and it's just not. Like someone was saying, like people know what to do, but they need the backing, encouragement, guidance, and support. And I think that's exactly true. Like that's what it is like, can you give them all of that while they come to their own
Mm,
decision in the process? Mm.
that's such a good point. That's such a good point. It's one of my favorite things to do as a coach is actually to remind myself like I don't have to have every single answer for you. In fact, you have all the answers within yourself because they have their intuition. So as coaches, if we can become experts at helping pull out our clients' intuition and help them really find that voice inside that knows what the right path is, that knows what the answer is, that knows in their body what feels best to them, I mean, that's a superpower as a coach. It's
Exactly.
a million
Mhm.
times more powerful than telling them or
Yes.
offering a suggestion to them.
I think that's the perfect way to say it. I always say to my clients, like, your job is to listen to your intuition, and then our job is to put strategy around that. But if you go the opposite way, it's always going to feel worse, you know? And
Yeah.
I think that like that's where the like tell someone what to do thing doesn't land, is
Yeah.
because it's like often not checking in with themselves first. But if you check in first, of course strategy is important. Of course, like
Sure.
maybe I know something that you don't about like what would make sense for your funnel or your ads or something, but it's like that's so secondary to all of like that initial stuff about like what is actually right for you. And I think, you know, a lot of people just haven't cultivated self-trust enough to trust themselves to do that. So it's easy to want to hire the coach that will like tell them what to do. But if
Hmm.
you've been stuck in business for a long time and you're always looking for someone to tell you what to do, it's not because they're not telling you what to do. It's like the reason you're stuck is because you're still looking for that, you know?
Oh, so good. That's so good. It's so true. The last
Which,
thing that, yeah,
oh, God.
I was gonna say the last like point on this is that it might have left my brain. Hold on, it's gonna come back. When you can, um, uh, it'll come back to me. It'll come back to me.
That's
Hi,
fine.
Shaima.
You, we'll circle back, but I think I was gonna say it kind of leads us to the next point
Yeah.
anyway, because it's like if you've been stuck and people keep telling you what to do and you're not doing it, I think there's like this interesting dynamic too that I think is always a myth in our industry. One that
Mm.
personally like pisses me off quite a bit. I feel like there's been this huge movement in our industry over the last like couple years of like talking about like people being self-led or self-responsible. And I think this idea that a client is always entirely responsible for their own results is one that like gets really misguided in our space. So like what we're saying is like, yes, they need to like trust themselves, listen to their intuition, be guided back to that. But then I think like the dark side of that is then we can sometimes have coaches acting like nothing they do matters, like it's all on the client. The client's entirely responsible for the result. And so I feel like that's another myth where it's like, yes, the client has to take personal responsibility,
Sure.
listen to their intuition, but like why are they hiring you if you can't help them, right? Like, I think that's such a thing. Mhm.
I love this point that you're making, this myth, because I remember also what I was going to say, and it ties into what
Oh,
we're
yeah.
where we're going. Um, I think what separates the coaches, the good from the great, or like the mediocre from the great, from the good and the great, is having a skill set,
Hmm.
right, will take you a lot farther, and it will ultimately separate you and create more sustainability in your business than not having a solid coaching skill set or any foundations of coaching, because
Yeah.
you don't need a certification. This industry is not regulated. However, you need the skills and the tools, like you were saying earlier, the hundreds of processes to help take your clients through a transformation. And I feel like that does like bust this myth, because even number two, because like you were saying, it is our actually we do have a huge responsibility
Yeah.
as coaches to be able to support our clients in this way, right? Like there, it's inevitable for you not to have any transformation if you don't have, it's inevitable, it's inevitable to have transformation when you have a solid process and processes to take your clients through. Like you will create change for your clients, and
Yeah.
you are responsible for that 100%.
Yeah. Totally. It's like if I think that what I always find interesting about coaching, I think about this a lot, is like if one of my clients like sat, this sounds crazy for a second, but hear me out. I think you'll agree with me.
I'm
Like if one
so
of my clients
Yeah.
took an hour a week, or we meet for 45 minutes 3 times a month. So let's take that same client took 45 minutes 3 times a month and went and just talked to a fucking tree. They would get results from that. Like
Yes.
I promise you they would, right? Because just having the time and space to sit and talk something out, to sit and think about their business for that much time is so valuable. But if we're going to be better than just a tree,
Yeah.
right? We have to like bring skills and tools to the table, and we have to be willing to say, yes, this is on me too. This is not just on you. Like I'm in it with you. Otherwise, just go do it anywhere. Go do it into a fucking voice note on your phone. Like there has to be more than that, you know?
Mm, it's so true. It is so true. So, like, let's talk about an example of this because I think there's do's and don'ts of this. I once had a client who I was coaching, and she came to me and she was like, I really need to make some money. Like, I have not made good money yet. Like, basically, like, it felt like blame in a way where she was like
Mm.
blaming me, but I knew that it really wasn't like about that necessarily. So, what would you do in a situation where a client comes to you and they put that on you? Like, hey, Lacey,
Yeah,
you're my coach and I need to make some fucking money right now.
totally. I think I have so much to say about this. I love this question. I think number one, I feel like it's normal. Like that's a normal transference of like pressure and power in a relationship like that. When you're feeling a ton of pressure to like make money quickly, like your brain and body sometimes, depending on what's going on for you or how you're wired or what's happening in that
Sure.
moment, wants to unload that
Yes.
responsibility or pressure. And so, where are you going to do that? Oh, duh, of course, your coach. And so, I just want to say, like, that is such a normal thing that happens. And I think as soon as we recognize, like, the client's not mad at me, they're in a ton of discomfort. The client is not blaming me.
Hmm.
They do not know where to put this intensity. And, like, having, again, like, the tools and the skill set and the ability to be like, oh, this is what's happening is really helpful. But then, two, I really have this belief that results always make sense.
Mm.
So if if you're not making the money you want to make in your business, something about that makes fucking sense. And so it's my job to help you figure out why that makes sense. Like
Mm.
maybe it makes sense because you haven't been showing up in the way that you really wanted to. How can we help you with that? Maybe it makes sense because you're not like actually speaking to their objections when you have sales calls. Maybe it makes sense because you actually are terrified of
Right. You have
making
like
the
an
money
energetic
and there's
block.
yeah, like but they're like just like success leaves clues, not having success leaves clues too. And if we can
Mm.
look at those, like I think that like that is our ability as a coach because when you're so in your own shit, you can't see that. So like as a coach, the value you bring is just having clear perspective. And so I think like as long as you make them feel like I totally hear you and I'm
Yeah.
here to figure this out with you, they are going to calm down. Like they are going to feel better. They're going to, not be transferring that blame in the same way. But I think when we like feel like that and then we
Yeah.
get prickly about it is when the
Yes.
dynamic gets bad. Does that make sense?
Oh my God. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think that is such a great way to put it because we have to be able to regulate our nervous systems as coaches to know, like, okay, we're going to help this client figure this out. And this this result is not our fault as coaches or
Yeah.
lack of result. So it's like it kind of teeters the line of what we're talking about in a way where it's like what is the responsibility of the coach in that scenario and what is not.
I think, tell me if you agree with this, but to
Yeah.
me, the responsibility is being willing to help figure that out. Like for
Yeah.
me, I'm like, my responsibility as a coach is always to be able to see where the next opportunity is or to see, what we need to shift. And like, if I can't see that, that's my work to go do.
Totally. Oh my
Right.
God. Agree 100%. Agree 100%. And I think a lot of people in that scenario would go into almost like a either a fight or flight response as a coach or a fix it mode
Yeah.
where it's like, um, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I'm not doing a good job, so I have to figure out how I can like step up and la da da. Instead of coming from a really regulated space of not having to hold their hand, but help them figure out how to like what it is. Figure out
Yeah.
what it is from a really calm, collected, and loving space, compassionate space.
I also think to like extend that out, what I notice with clients too is that not only is that one time, but that's lots of times because most of us, what we need to do to like move forward is probably the thing we haven't already done because it's uncomfortable for us or it's our edge or whatever. And so it's not just doing it once, but it's like holding that stance again and again of like, no, here's the right problem to solve. Here's the right problem to solve. Hey, I know you wanted to make money quickly, and now it seems like we're going down this whole other path.
Mm,
Can we come back
mm,
here to this problem we need to solve? And that looks like session after session doing that
yes,
sometimes.
yes.
And I think like a lot of people do not have the patience for that. They think like if we've talked about it once in a session, it should be fixed,
Mm,
right?
it's so
And
true.
if not, they're either going to go into self blame or they're going to blame the client, you
Mm,
know?
100%. I also think that and I've told this to my students, there has been time like a big thing of what I teach in QCA is part of the method is called equanimity. And equanimity in our method means meeting your clients where they are, not where you think they should be, and being
So
able to
good.
redirect them right back to, okay, this is what you said you wanted to work on, and like meeting them over and over again in that place that they need help with. And there's been times where I thought as a coach that we would be like light years from where we started, and sometimes we're working on the same thing for 3 months because that's what they need. So yeah, I think it goes both ways where sometimes coaches can think like, okay, it should be over and done with, let's move on, or a client might think that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I find again and again is that most people, and self included, I can totally tell you what mine is, but we have like one core issue.
Default defaults.
Default, yeah. And if we know that and we figure that out and we work that again and again, and we're willing to talk about that session after session, and we're willing to keep going, if I'm having a problem, the likelihood 9 out of 10 times is that it's this thing. It gets so fucking easy if we're like, "Ugh, why am I talking about control again?" Mine's always control. Like I always
Hmm.
have a control edge, you know? And anytime I'm like struggling in my business or unhappy or whatever, I'm like, is this a control thing? And I don't want it to be, but it almost always is. And when I acknowledge that and shift it, it gets so fast. And I see that with clients too. But when they're like, "Ugh, I do not want to talk about this again," it's like, okay, well, if you do,
It's
that's
here.
probably where all your results are going to come from. But I think, I think it's not always easy. But like you were saying, it's like when we're meeting them and ourselves
Yeah.
there is when everything really shifts, right?
I feel like I go show up to every therapy session and I'm like, I don't want to talk about this thing that I'm so sick of talking about
Yeah.
this. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about something else, and then it ends up being right at that right back at that same thing.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. So
And it's like
interesting.
freeing when you're like, oh, I don't have 13 like things that I need to fix about myself or whatever. I probably have one. Like, what would it look like to lean into that, right?
Right, right, totally. I'm curious for those of you listening now, what where do you fall in this myth of remind them the myth one more time
Like
is yeah.
like the client's results are entirely their responsibility. So like, yeah, I think you could say like, how do you take responsibility as like a
Yeah.
coach or service provider? Because I think that's important to know,
Hmm.
like I think they're, even like we can move on from this one too, but I just have to say this because it's like that trend we've heard about in our industry. I'm sure you feel the same about this, Ash, but of like clients not using their calls and stuff.
Oh my God. I can't stand that.
Like, what? Like that is right. And it just like, so it's like, even if your responsibility as a coach is just showing up fully for the calls and like making sure they're fully utilized, like that is a place you can actually take responsibility in your
That
face.
is so true. And if you're not sure what Lacey's talking about, there's just like this trend that's like, oh, you have 3 calls a month, but some of my clients, they only use one. They don't
They're so
even,
self-responsible. They
yeah,
don't need
they're
to.
so it's like gaslighting
Yeah.
people to believe that they are so responsible that they actually don't need coaching that they paid thousands of dollars for.
It's
It's
crazy.
so mind blowing.
But then that person could feel like a bad client for showing up and using it or whatever. And it's like, no, your coach is
Like,
supposed to care about you using it. They're supposed to have a responsibility to deliver on what you paid for. Like that is not rocket science.
oh my
Mhm.
God, it's so true. It's so true. I feel like that's a topic as well. Like as a coach, feeling like um, that's a whole other topic. We'll go live another time
Okay.
about delivering what you paid for as a,
Oh my God,
as a
I
client.
will totally do that. Yes. Okay, so our last one is if they're not showing up, they just don't want it bad enough. I feel like this is such a good one because I feel like um people can be so quick to almost like write off their clients as
Mm-hmm.
like unmotivated or not wanting it bad enough if they're not, to go back to number one, doing what they tell them to. And it gets to be this like really toxic cycle, I think, of like, I tell someone what to do, and if they don't do it, then they're not being self-responsible enough, or they don't want it bad enough. And that's where like all of those tie in together, you know?
Whoa. Yes, 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 yes. Oh, we have a good comment that we should
Oh,
read in a second. But I just want to respond to that and say that there's two things here. If your clients are not doing what they said they would do, or they said they wanted to do, from a coaching perspective, my lens is, are you working with them at an identity level, or are you working with them at just a behavioral
yeah.
level, right? So there's that part of it where when you are working with the subconscious, you're working with shifting at the identity so that they are actually becoming the person and the version of themselves that does those things. But a lot of times at the behavioral level, when you're telling them what to do, like you said, it cycles and it loops because they're not bought into that. So you as a coach have to be an expert at helping your clients get bought in to the things that they say that they want to create, bought into their desires, more than like just a desire standpoint, but actually taking action on those desires. And then there's also a really masterful way of holding your clients accountable that isn't enabling, that isn't it, it's very empowering for them to actually do the things that they say they want to do. So there's so much that we can go into into there.
I also think, like, to speak to that identity perspective, like, you want to be so careful what identity, like, you're
Yeah.
even labeling your clients with, because I can think of a perfect example here. This client and I have talked really openly about this for years, so I feel comfortable sharing it. But I had a client who, when we started together, like, was not wanting to get out of bed. Like, she was
Mm.
literally like having a really hard time, like, getting up to work, doing anything. And I feel like it would have been so easy for me to be like, she just doesn't even want it bad enough. She's not even willing to like work for an hour a day. What was actually true is she was struggling like so deeply with self trust, identity, like all of those things. And one of the first things we did is we got her just like getting up out of her bed and like going to a coffee shop for like a couple hours a day. And it was like the most transformative thing. And she was someone who had not had results in her business for 4 years and then went on to build a multiple $1 million a year business, or a multiple $1 million business. And it's like, you like, we could have so easily at that point been like, she just doesn't want it bad enough, she's never someone that's going to do it, it's been 4 years and she won't even work for an hour a day. And it's like, you cannot make that decision for
Mm.
someone. Like, you do not know how bad they actually want it. What was happening for her was like blocks and stuff points that had nothing to do with how bad she wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like you have to be willing to excavate that and sit with that, and not decide like, oh, this isn't going to be one of my successful clients or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean?
Ooh. Ooh, I felt that. I felt that. I think that is such a thing that that coaches do, is like, that client, she's going to make it. That one's not going
Yep.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yep. We want to be mind
we want
readers about that.
to be mind readers, and that's the opposite of what we teach in QCA, is like, we are coaching from miracle
Yeah.
consciousness, from the field of unlimited possibilities, and that no matter how hard of a time that client is going through, or no matter how stuck you perceive them to be, anything is possible. Literally anything.
Yeah.
Anything. And we can't put them in those boxes, because it's really actually a reflection of how we limit ourselves.
It's so true. That's such a great point. Like, it's like, if you're doing that, like, you're saying something to yourself too. You're like, I have to be working this amount to be like worthy of success, or like, how it's almost like, how dare she not get up and work, which is just a reflection of like what you're feeling inside,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, yeah. That's why we have to become really clear vessels for our
Yeah.
clients, and really do our own work at the same time on ourselves, to really excavate all of that within us so that we don't project onto our clients.
I think that's the biggest thing there too, is like, I think, especially, I'll speak to this. I'm curious what you think on this, Ash, but like, I think especially like from the business coaching
Oh my God.
standpoint, sometimes people put so much on their clients because like they think that like their clients having success is like their ticket to being a successful coach.
Hmm.
And so then it all gets like really icky intertwinement of like
Mm,
almost like they're like this launch needs to go good because they want to be able to like share that result the next week or something like that. And I just think that that part gets so wonky, and that's why we get pissed over like they're not doing what I tell them to do, or like they're not showing up fully. And it's like all of that's like our own ego stuff, you know?
it's so true. I think that's such a nuanced distinction that you just made, and I really I had I knew I've thought about that, but I haven't thought about it in that way specifically. And I think that it can be very tricky. It can be a very tricky, sticky place for coaches to get their ego wrapped up in. And that's kind of like where I bring in this acronym called NATO, not attached to the outcome, right? We
Yes.
cannot be attached to our clients' outcomes. We can
So true.
manifest with our clients, and we hold them in that vision. We hold them in the vision just like we hold ourselves in the vision of our life that we want to create, right? I'm seeing everything my clients want, and I'm holding that with them, and I'm praying for them, and I'm visualizing for them. But at the end of the day, um, I have to stay unattached to what happens, because I do trust that whatever happens for them in that launch or in that relationship or whatever it is you're coaching someone around, they're getting what they need, and you're there to support them and guide them through that next level of transformation of whatever it is that they're getting in their reality from that launch or that relationship. Or does that make sense?
Oh my God. Totally. I have really found that personally. I feel like it's such a weird thing to say because it sounds like uncaring in some ways, but the truth is the less I care about my clients' results, the more they get them. Like it's
Oh,
so
we need
ironic how that
to post
works.
that. That is so good.
Yeah, like
But I think
I
it's
just think
tied
it
to
sounds
that.
weird,
It does,
right? But
yeah.
it's like so true in practice.
So here's the thing too. I think it's connected to that responsibility
Yeah.
piece, where it's like it's the balance between not being attached but also holding that responsibility that you'll be able to hold your clients through it
Yeah.
all. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
Well, it's almost like a it's like the difference between setting like a process-based goal or an outcome goal, right? Like if you set the outcome goal of like I'll have $1 million launch, like sometimes that goes really well and sometimes that can create a lot of wonkiness and self-trust stuff in your system.
Mm,
But if you set a goal of like here are all the ways I know I'm going to show up to get my $1 million launch, and then you watch yourself checking off those goals, it feels so much easier. And I think that that's so similar as a coach sometimes is like, if you can, not the outcome goal of like, my client has a 100K launch, but the process of like, I show up every step of the way. I'm in it with them. I give them all of like my presence. I give them the right
yeah.
tools. Then it's going to feel good no matter what, because you're like, I know I like really held my part of the responsibility versus like, now I'm just like disappointed because like it didn't
It didn't
happen for them
happen.
in the way it was supposed to or whatever.
I think that that's really challenging for some people to accept, some coaches.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I think as coaches, we want to feel like we're fully in control. And I think as soon as we recognize we're not, it gets easier. But of course, like
Yeah,
who doesn't want to be? I mean, again, I was saying earlier, that's always my edge
right.
too, is like I always want to feel like I'm fully in control, but like the best results always come from the opposite for me. So I have to keep working that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like life too. For
Yeah.
me, when I want something so bad and then I release it and I let it go,
Yeah.
that's when it has space to come in. I mean, it's really the same thing in a way.
I remember one of my clients, her husband was in this like personal development thing, and she shared with me something that they shared in it, and it was basically the saying was like, if you want it, you can't have it.
Ooh,
And it was like this idea of like wanting is what's pushing it away versus like
yes.
so I think that's it. When you're like we already are getting it. We're having a beautiful relationship. I'm supporting them fully. I'm showing up in every way I can. Like it's already here when you're like, I want them to get this. It's almost like you're kind of guaranteed it's not going to go how
Yeah,
you want
you
it to go,
are.
you
You
know?
are. And you're working so hard for it.
Yeah.
I always say, if you're working too hard as a coach, you are working too hard.
Yes,
It should feel light.
amen.
It should feel easy. It should feel expansive. It should feel supportive. It should feel, yeah, I don't know, just very collaborative and synergistic.
Yes, so good. I love this conversation. Okay, so just to
Yeah.
recap, I'll just say them again because I feel like it's helpful. But like, your clients should not always do what you tell them to
These are
do. The myth that,
our myths,
yeah, well,
yeah.
that would be the, I guess I said it the wrong way, but like the myth is they should always do what you tell them to do. The myth is that the clients are entirely responsible for their results and that if they're not showing up, it's because they don't want it bad enough. None of these things are true.
None of these things are true. And if you're just tuning in now, go back and watch this live because it
Yes.
was so good. I'm like, why isn't this a podcast episode?
Yes. Appreciate you so much. Okay, tell everybody about QCA a little bit. I know you're not like in a launch
Yes,
right now, but just like if they're like, what was,
yes.
because I know we mentioned it a few times. If they're like, what is
Yeah.
that
We're heading
again?
into savings list
Oh,
season. So it's very exciting.
yeah.
Like next week, actually, we'll be in savings list season. So that's exciting. So if you are vibing with this conversation and you're like, I know that I need more skills and tools and processes under my belt to help my clients have bigger transformations, to feel more supportive as a coach to them, and to up level your craft. Um, Look into Quantum Coaching Academy. We are a 6 month plus certification program, and we train in 8 modalities plus so many processes and tools, so many. And we run half the program live, so we have live calls. We're supporting you. We're answering all of your questions. We're teaching. We're demoing the tools and processes, and then you're practicing. You'll get really hands-on practice and feedback from my team, from the coaches on my team. You'll have a coach, you'll be a coach in the program, you'll have a coach in the program, you'll practice your face off, and you will be so highly skilled in your craft when you graduate from QCA. And we're just so proud of some of our students are even on here right now, just like the businesses that they're creating and how confident they feel in really being able to look someone in the eyes on a discovery call and just know without a doubt that you can help someone transform. I mean, there's really something to that, and we call it big coach energy. Because
Yes,
when
I
you
love
have
when
your
you say
big coach
that.
energy, it's like you're naturally magnetizing success to you. So the live part of the cohort starts in July, and we will start enrolling next week on our savings list. So if you have any questions, DM me. You can DM Lacey.
Yeah.
And if you find us through this live and you end up applying to the program, make sure that you put this live on there on the application.
I think it's so interesting because if I look at my own business and experience, like the thing that has given me a successful business isn't like because I'm great at marketing or because I know business strategy. It's because I'm a great coach. And I just feel like that's so important to say. It's like we often like forget that that's like the foundation for everything is like really solve a problem, be fantastic at what you do. And then like the marketing is easy. The
It's so
strategy is easy.
true.
Yeah.
It's so true. Oh, I love how I just refer to it as QCA. Thank you. It's the Quantum
Yeah.
Coaching Academy. Quantum Coaching Academy. It's linked up on my Instagram, and we have a couple students in here. I love you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Tessa.
So
Yay.
good.
Love
Love you. Thank you so
you.
much for doing
Thank you.
this. This was so
So much fun.
good.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.